Hello, my friends. Welcome back. I am glad this moment brought you here. Imagine standing in a square in Rome. It is the afternoon of May 8th, 2025. There are 150,000 people around you. They are waiting. The sky above the Sistine Chapel is gray, and then smoke. White smoke, curling up into the Roman air. The crowd roars. This is HitoCast, and today we tell the story of a quiet man from a small town in Illinois who went to Peru at 30 years old and never quite came back. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you have been with us before, it is so good to have you again. Take a moment to subscribe if this kind of story speaks to you. It helps more people find their way here. The year is 1955. It is September. A boy is born in Chicago, Illinois, in the United States. His name is Robert Francis Prevost. His family lives in Dolton, a quiet working-class suburb just south of the city. The house is small, the street is tidy, the life is ordinary. But the center of this family's world is not the house, it is the church, St. Mary of the Assumption Parish. Every Sunday the Prevost family is there. Every week they are active. Two of his mother's sisters are nuns. His mother is a librarian. His father served in the Navy and worked in education. Faith is not something they talk about. It is something they live. Can you imagine growing up in a home like that, where the church is not a place you visit, but a place you belong to? Robert is a quiet boy, serious. He does not dream of becoming a priest, at least not yet. He goes to university. And here is something surprising. He does not study religion. He does not study history. He studies mathematics. He earns his degree in 1977 from Villanova University in Pennsylvania. But something is already growing inside him. Something quiet. Something patient. That same year, 1977, Robert Prevost enters the novitiate of the Order of St. Augustine. A novitiate, that is, a place where a person begins training to become a religious brother or priest. He takes his first vows. He studies divinity in Chicago. He is ordained as a priest in 1982. Then he travels to Rome. In Rome, he studies a subject called canon law. Canon law, that means the official rules and laws of the Catholic Church. It is a difficult subject. It requires great precision, great patience. He earns his doctorate in 1987. His professors notice something about him. He is not a showboat. He does not speak loudly or seek attention, but he thinks carefully. He sees clearly. One classmate says, "Very calm, but extremely intelligent, and extremely compassionate." He is building something, but he does not know yet what it will become. And then, something happens that changes everything. In 1985, while he is still writing his final thesis in Rome, the Augustinian order sends him somewhere new, to a small mission town called Chulucanas in the north of Peru. He is 30 years old. He carries his books, his law degree, and his American education. The Peruvian sun is strong. The streets are dusty. The people are poor. He does not know it yet, but he has just arrived at the place that will make him who he is. By 1988, he is working in Trujillo, a coastal city in northern Peru. Desert on one side, ocean on the other. Open-air markets, colonial churches, fishermen walking home at dawn. Robert Prevost teaches in the local seminary. He serves as a judge in a church court, a judge, and also a student, because he is learning something no classroom can teach. He leads a small parish on the edge of the city. He walks the streets. He learns the language. He learns not just Spanish, he learns the way Peruvian people carry their faith. The slow processions, the quiet devotions. The way a poor family can hold their pain and their hope in the same hands at the same time. A fellow missionary who worked beside him in those years remembers, they served together in a community of poor subsistence farmers. Farmers who grew just enough to survive, nothing more. He was not making headlines. He was learning how to listen. Can you imagine? A man trained in the law of the church, sitting with farmers in the dust of northern Peru, listening. Year after year. He spends most of the next 15 years in Peru. And then, in 2001, his fellow Augustinians elect him Prior General, the head of the entire worldwide Augustinian order. It is the highest position in his religious family. He must now travel to nearly 50 countries: Africa, Asia, Europe, Latin America. He visits communities where Augustinian brothers live in war zones. He sits with priests who serve in places the news has forgotten. He leads the order for 12 years, quietly, fairly, without drama. But in 2014, Pope Francis calls him back to Peru, this time as a bishop. As Bishop of Chiclayo, a diocese in northern Peru, and 1 year later, Robert Prevost does something unusual. He becomes a citizen of Peru. Not just a foreign priest working there, a Peruvian. He belongs to that country now, legally, spiritually, completely. The people of Chiclayo know him. When floods come, he is there. When illness spreads during the COVID pandemic, he is there. He is not a bishop who gives orders from an office behind a closed door. He goes out. He gets his boots muddy. He stands with his people in the rain. Then, in January 2023, Pope Francis calls him to Rome once more. This time, to one of the most powerful positions in the Vatican, Prefect of the Dicastery for Bishops. This office decides who becomes a bishop in every Catholic diocese in the world. It is quiet power, great responsibility. And he carries it the same way he carries everything else, without noise. For 2 years, he meets bishops from every country on earth. He listens to their problems. He reads their files. He learns their names. He shakes their hands. And they, slowly, quietly, they come to know him too. A newspaper in Italy describes him as cosmopolitan and shy. Appreciated, they write, by conservatives and progressives alike. He has not taken loud positions. He has simply served. And then, Pope Francis dies. April 21st, 2025. The Church is without its leader. The conclave begins on May 7th. 133 cardinals walk into the Sistine Chapel. The great doors close behind them. The world is locked outside. They have no phones, no internet, no news. They sleep in a simple building nearby. They wake early. They pray. They vote. And then, something small and funny happens. As the cardinals prepare for their first vote, a signal is detected. A mobile phone. Somewhere inside the Sistine Chapel, a room filled with jamming equipment to prevent exactly this. An older cardinal reaches into his pocket. His face is red. He surrenders the phone. A moment of silence. Then, one person later says it was unimaginable even for a film. The cardinals, using only the alarm clocks provided by the Vatican, continue. They vote. Robert Prevost's name begins to appear. It appears again and again. By the third ballot, something is moving. The cardinals from South America look at this man, born in Chicago but Peruvian in his heart, and they say, "He is one of us." But then a mistake. One ballot is accidentally doubled. The whole round must be voided, must be done again. They start over. The man who will become pope waits. Those who watch him say he is calm. On the fourth ballot, more than 100 votes, out of 133. It is done. Cardinal Parolin leans toward him. Do you accept your election as Supreme Pontiff? He accepts, quietly. What name do you take? Leo. The cardinals applaud. Then they embrace him. At 6:07 in the evening, white smoke rises from the chimney of the Sistine Chapel. 150,000 people are standing in St. Peter's Square below. They roar, they cry, they reach for each other. A man steps onto the central balcony in white robes. He raises his hand. His first words, he speaks in Italian. Then, in a gesture that surprises everyone who knows his story, he speaks in Spanish. La paz esté con todos vosotros. Peace be with all of you. In Lima, Peru, thousands of miles away, people erupt in the streets. This is their man. Not just America's man. Theirs. Now. Why did he choose the name Leo? A papal name is never a small decision. It is the first thing a new pope says to the world, before any speech, before any policy. It is a single word that carries 100 years of history inside it. Leo XIV chose his name to honor Pope Leo XIII. Leo XIII lived from 1878 to 1903. He was pope during the Industrial Revolution, a time when machines were replacing workers, when factories were dark and dangerous, when the rich were growing richer, and the poor were growing desperate. In 1891, Leo XIII wrote a document called Rerum Novarum, that means of new things. It was the Church's first great statement about the rights of workers. The right to fair wages, safe conditions, human dignity. Can you imagine? One document, written by one man, that helped shape labor rights across the entire Western world. Now it is 2025. There are new machines. They are not made of iron and steam. They are made of data and code. Artificial intelligence, robots, systems that can replace not just physical workers, but thinkers, writers, artists, teachers. Leo XIV stands before this new revolution, and he says, the Church must speak again. The same question, a new machine, but the same old human heart that can be forgotten, replaced, discarded, or protected. His first months as Pope are not loud. He does not make grand announcements. He shakes hands. He blesses families. He travels to Turkey to pray with Christian leaders from other traditions, standing above the ancient submerged ruins of a basilica, praying together across centuries of division. He visits Lebanon, standing quietly in a country torn by conflict. And slowly, another picture begins to appear. He is not trying to build his papacy on noise. He is trying to build it on listening, on consultation, on unity. Again and again, he returns to one simple truth. The Church must speak to the modern world without losing the dignity of the human person. Not power first, not speed first, the human person first. But he also speaks, clearly, even when it is difficult. He is an American pope, but he does not protect American policies. He criticizes the conditions inside immigration detention centers in the United States. He speaks for migrants crossing dangerous waters. He calls for peace in conflicts where American weapons are involved. He condemns violence against women. He calls for care of the earth. His birth country does not always like what he says, but he is not speaking for any country. He is speaking for the people no country remembers. The poor, the displaced, the forgotten. A man who once served subsistence farmers in the dust of northern Peru has not forgotten them. The cardinals who elected Robert Prevost said afterward that his American nationality was almost negligible in the deliberations. They did not choose an American. They chose a man who had spent his entire adult life walking away from comfort. From Chicago to Peru, from Rome back to Peru, from the center of power to the edges where the real work is done. And this may be the deepest meaning of his election. The Church did not look first to wealth or influence or national strength. It looked to a pastor, to a missionary, to a man formed not only in offices and classrooms, but in parishes, in poor communities, and in the long work of listening. In that sense, his election says something beautiful about the Catholic Church itself. The heart of the Church is not only in great cities or famous rooms, it is also wherever the gospel is carried with humility, patience, and love. He speaks 5 languages. He holds 2 citizenships. He has mud on his boots from a dozen countries. He led an order across 50 nations without raising his voice. He spent 2 years in Rome listening to every bishop on earth before a single one of them cast a vote for him. And when they finally did, he told his closest friend that he could not be elected. St. Augustine wrote in an ancient sermon that though we are many, in the one Christ we are one. Robert Prevost chose these words as his personal motto when he became a bishop. In illo uno unum. In the one we are one. He walked quietly through the world. He went where no one was watching. He listened to people the world had forgotten, and the world changed because of it. My friend, maybe you know something about this too. The world remembers the balcony, the white smoke, the name that is spoken at the end. But God often works much earlier than that, in the dust, in the waiting, in the years when no one is looking. Maybe you have lived through years like that, quiet years, hidden years, years of faithful work that no one seemed to see. The real story was written long before, in the small acts, in the patient service, in the muddy roads, in the choice to keep going. Robert Prevost spent many years far from the center of power, but grace was already at work there, and perhaps, in your own life, grace is at work in quiet places too, even now, even if no one else can see it yet. Pope Leo XIV, born Robert Francis Prevost, September 14, 1955, is the 267th Bishop of Rome, the first American pope in 2,000 years of church history, the first pope from the Augustinian order. He holds citizenship in 2 countries. His papacy has only just begun. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today, my friends. Every episode of HitoCast is made with great care, and it is made for you. Leave a comment and tell me, which part of this story surprised you most? Was it the 30 years in Peru, the phone found in the Sistine Chapel, or something else? Until next time, you are not alone on this journey.